16th of April, 2025. I am the Wolfman, and I am recording a Rabbit Trails video in my front yard. My lovely cats are walking around, so if you hear crunchy footsteps, or if the camera wobbles, that will be because my cats seem to love to step on my tripod. I've been giving them some yard time lately because it seems to keep them from fighting, and my one cat, this is Francis. The other cat that you can't see is right there. His name is Sausage, and his name is Sausage because since I've been free feeding him, he has put on quite a bit of weight, and so I have stopped free feeding unless I go away for a weekend or something, and also I am giving him some yard time because hopefully if he goes out in the yard and runs and plays and hunts, then he'll lose some weight. I want him to live a long time and have healthy joints. So he's beautiful with his big fat butt, but I feel like it's going to cause him some discomfort and some dis-ease at some point. So I have many things to talk about. I don't really have an agenda. The last several videos that I put on here, I had a very structured message that I wanted. Like, I was flowing, but I was flowing through my bullet points. I don't have bullet points. I don't have an outline. I just have a lot of new information, and I've gone for a walk. I walked for an hour and 12 minutes this morning, and it was lovely. I either saw four cardinals, or I saw the same cardinal four times, or some combination of the two. Regardless, there were four cardinal sightings. I can't really tell the difference between individual cardinals. I'm not an ornithologist, but I get the appeal. So I walked past a tree farm. There's a tree farm very close to my house where they grow lowland pines. And I would love to talk to the owner of that farm and see if I can get permission to walk through the trees and maybe even to camp out there, because I feel like it's basically a grove. It's a pine grove, and I feel like camping amongst the pines would be just lovely. I have a relationship with pine trees, and I have a relationship with oak trees. I was born in northwest Indiana, and oak trees and walnut trees were prevalent where I grew up. Not a lot of pine trees, not a lot of evergreens at all. There were, I want to say, firs. I don't know what a Christmas tree is, but there were a few of those. But down here in North Florida, the most southern place in the United States, outside of maybe Alabama or Georgia, culturally southern, obviously, either the tip of Texas or California or the Keys. The Florida Keys is probably geographically the most southern, but I would say that Alabama, Georgia, and Florida are probably the most culturally southern. Louisiana is in the running, but it's got that Cajun French influence, and so it's really not, like, it's definitely southern, but it's got its own thing going on. So, like, if you think about the cliches of the Deep South, there's different stuff in Louisiana. It's all, beads and masks and vampires. So, I went to Paralounge. Paralounge isn't the name anymore. It's the name of the, I guess, organization that throws the events. It's never been called a festival. I will probably mistakenly call it a festival. a few times, but the reason they don't call it a festival is very specific, and it's a good reason, actually. I think it's very wise not to call it a festival, because you take like Nixon, right? And trust me, this is connected. Nixon, I think, was the response to Aldous Huxley and Richard Alpert and those people. The whole tune in, turn on, drop out movement scared the conservatives, and because the conservatives were scared, you get Nixon, and then Nixon passes the Sweeping Psychedelics Act and makes everything illegal and puts back scientific research on marijuana, on LSD, on mescaline, psilocybin, all the things that we're starting to study now that are having these huge benefits, some for physical health, but definitely for mental health. Ketamine treatments, these things are doing wonders for veterans with PTSD, and all kinds of cool stuff is coming out of it. And we could have been doing that in the 70s, but we weren't, because the hippies came on too strong, in my opinion. They came on a little too strong, and in the 50s and 60s, and they scared the conservatives, and the conservatives were like, hey, like, we've got a culture. It's kind of a young culture. It's, America is only like 200 or 300 years old, and 200 years old. 1975, 1776, 1976 was the bicentennial. Like, that's a very young country, and this is an experiment that's really never been tried before. Outside of America, you don't find a lot of countries where you have, like, prior to 1776, well, I mean, we could even go back, just to be safe, we could go back to the 1500s. Prior to the 1500s, it'd be very difficult to find a spot in the world where you have people of different ethnic, cultural, even genetic backgrounds cohabitating in the same place. So, before 1500, probably later than that, but to be safe, 1500, if you went to a country, everybody in that country looked the same, mostly. There were a few travelers, but generally speaking, all the people in Saudi Arabia looked Saudi Arabian, all the people in India looked Indian, all the people in England looked British, even to the point where you could visibly tell the difference between an Englishman, a Scotsman, and an Irishman. Now in America, if you see somebody, like, might be an Englishman, might be a Scotsman, might be an American, you could be completely wrong. It could be some combination of, Dutch, Italian, and like with a tiny bit of South American, African, and Native American sprinkled in. This melting pot thing we've got going on here is very new. This is not something that humanity has really tried before. So, like, yeah, we messed up big time. And if I had a time machine, one of the big things I would do is, like, take some good video evidence of all of what's going on right now and take it back to the Founding Fathers and be like, look, dudes, if there's any way that we can make this work without slavery, we're gonna have some serious issues. There's gonna be some serious consequences to slavery. There's gonna be a civil war. There's gonna be Jim Crow. There's gonna be, what do they call? It's an R word that happened after the Civil War. It's not reconstruction. There's gonna be Reconstruction. There's gonna be the backlash against Reconstruction. There's going to be the Civil Rights Movement. There's going to be, the backlash against the Civil Rights Movement. There's going to be, I think I said Jim Crow already. My point is, like, there are a lot of ripples that come out from building this country with slavery as the financial engine, one of which I think is wage labor. And so, like, yeah, like, I think the 14th, 15th Amendment, somewhere in there, like, no more slavery. Very good. However, the economy of the United States was built on slavery, and you've just removed the engine from the economy of the United States, at least the southern economy. So how are we going to replace this? Oh, well, we're going to get people to sell themselves into slavery by the hour. And so, like, you know, for if you got a great job for $45, $60, I can tell you to do whatever I want you to do for an hour. I mean, again, if you compare it to like slavery in the 1800s, the early 1800s, yes, I would much rather be a wage laborer in modern America than a slave in the 1820. But if you compare it to freedom, wage labor is not freedom, and it's also a little bit coerced because they locked up all the food. If you want more about this, you should read Ishmael and My Ishmael. These are 3 different books. Ishmael, My Ishmael, and the Story of B by, I want to say Daniel Quinn, but it might be David Quinn. I get his name messed up sometimes. There are some inaccuracies, all right? But it is such a counter-narrative to the narrative that I grew up with and that most of us grew up with that it's worth at least expanding your mind by incorporating this other narrative. There are a few things. He gets into these things that he calls like natural laws, and I think he's a little bit mistaken. My biggest critique of the book is that he says that if you increase the food supply, the population will grow, and that is a law in the same way that like negative 16 times t squared minus vt plus t, or whatever that is the law for, gravity and velocity and the trajectory of a projectile. But it's not. It's not. And the books were published, a long time ago, before the population plateaued. But like we're seeing now in developed countries, having a difficult time, or at least being worried about having a difficult time with population replacement in certain positions, like aircraft mechanics. We're not getting enough new aircraft mechanics in this country, and so like where are we going to find the people to do this? And developed countries were not actually having enough babies to even maintain the same level of population. I've heard it said that when we get to about 9 billion, and I've heard 12 billion, it's very likely that we will stop increasing. We won't get past either 9 billion or 12 billion, depending on who you ask. Now, it may be like a lizard. If you have a lizard that's just like free ranging, all other things being equal, they don't age the same way that we do. So like they don't necessarily die of old age, and so like alligators theoretically can grow forever. And so like you have a 25-foot alligator. If the radiation from the sun wasn't hitting it in the same way that it does now, if there was something different about our atmosphere so that there was less radiation reaching ground level, theoretically you could have a 250-foot alligator. It would just keep going and going and going until something kills it. But if you put an alligator, little baby alligator, in a terrarium that's only this long, it's not going to get longer than this. It's not going to outgrow its terrarium. They stay the same size. So maybe the human species has some kind of a property like that, where like if you increase the food supply, the population increases until it hits the borders of its terrarium. Like the species isn't going to outgrow the planet because it's not physically possible. You can't. Where you get the resources, like how? Because literally, to grow, you have to eat, because the cells are made of proteins, and so like you have to eat the doesn't have to be meat, but it could be beans, it could be whatever. That those actual molecules have to come from somewhere, and so like the mass of the planet isn't getting much bigger. Like we do get meteors, but that's like compared to the mass of the planet, statistically very small amounts of additional matter being added to the planet. And most of the meteors get pulled off by the moon, which is nice. Thanks, moon. So yeah, so like we're not gonna increase the population forever. So that's one. That's really the only real critique that I have of the Quinn books, the Ishmael, My Ishmael, and Story of B. I do think they're worth reading. Of course, he's a person, and we can think things that aren't true. I think he's well-meaning. I think the books are great. I think I got turned on to these books because I was raised independent fundamental Baptist Christian. And I've mentioned this before, but if you want to know more about my backstory without actually having a conversation with me, you can watch a documentary called Let Us Pray, Prey, and Jack Scopp and Jack Hyles are major figures in my life, and they are major figures in that documentary. So it seems like the environment I was raised in was much worse for women. It really barely included minorities at all, but it was not as bad as it could have been, based on the fact that I'm a white male, but it still wasn't fucking great. So anyways, so I grew up with this narrative in my head where like humans are the dominant species on the planet. All of this is built for us. This is our planet, not in the same way that this is the grasshopper's planet. Like this planet belongs to us, and we can do whatever the fuck we want with it. That was the narrative that I grew up with. And so then I was thinking about bees, and I was like, why do they have stingers? How does a bee having a stinger help human beings? This makes no sense. And then it, like, this is, I don't know, my late 20s, early 30s when I'm having this thought. And I realized, oh shit, like I left, like, modern American independent fundamental Baptist brand Christianity behind years ago, but I still have this shit ingrained in me. Like, instead of me being here to serve the planet, I think the planet's here to serve me, down to the stinger on a bee. I think that stinger on a bee is supposed to make my life easier somehow, and I'm trying to understand that. That's not what it's for. The stinger's not for me. The stinger's for the bees, man. It's so the bee can defend itself, potentially against humans. It's not for humans. It's for the bees. Maybe it's for the planet, but it's definitely not for us. Us being humans. And so I had this epiphany and I realized, like, oh, I'm still thinking that man should have dominion over the animals, and we should just, we should be the sovereigns and the rulers. And, oh, the lion's the king of the jungle? Wait till you meet a human with a gun. And, like, I've still got this narrative inside me that, like, we should subjugate the planet. And I mentioned this to a friend of mine, and they were like, you know what? You need to read these books. And the books are really good. They give you a counter-narrative to understand how hunter-gatherer tribes, especially the uncontacted ones, they're not better people than us by our ethical standards. I mean, people that try to contact the uncontacted tribes or get close to them often end up with an arrow in the underside of their plane. Like they're extremely territorial, extremely in-group preferenced, extremely violent. So let's not fall into the noble savage idea. However, they do live differently from us, which is a good insight to the fact that we don't have to live the way that we're living. And I try not to be judgmental. I'm not saying I'm not saying that, if you're an uncontacted hunter-gatherer and somebody flies over with a plane, that you shouldn't shoot it with an arrow. I'm just saying that that's what happens. So, like, if we fall into this thing of, like, watching Pocahontas and Moana and thinking that, like, the indigenous people are better than us, that's just the other side of the same problem. We're not better than them. They're not better than us. We're all just trying to figure it out. We're all humans. We're all just trying to figure it out. Cats have a way of figuring it out. Beavers have a way of figuring it out. Humans have a way of figuring it out. But the point is that there's more than one culture on this planet. It seems like, really, that there is one culture, even if you want to break it down into like Mexican and American and Canadian and Chinese and Ugandan and Rwandan and Brazilian and Portuguese and Spanish and all these different cultures. It's still like, yeah, but you got to get up, you got to go to work, you got to get a job, you got to get transportation to and from your job. Like, whatever language you're speaking, whatever food you're eating, these things seem to be constant, and this is cultural. Actually, the concept of a job doesn't exist the way that we think of it. There are things in the hunter-gatherer tribes that we came from 12,000 or so years ago, and the ones that still exist to this day. We're not more advanced than them. We're not the inevitable conclusion of a hunter-gatherer tribe. We're just a different cultural evolution. See, because humans are a little bit unique. There are a few other animals that have this going on, but we're a little bit unique because our behavior changes so much beyond our genetics changing. And so, like, up to Homo sapiens sapien, most of your evolutionary changes are genetic, and culture remains the same within the species for the most part. Now you've got, like, you do have some things, like they found that orcas have regional accents. So there are some things, but as far as, like, the difference between, an Australian that, like, digs a cave to live in and a middle American who, like, builds a hut, like, these behaviors, like, they can become very different, but with globalization, there is kind of a monoculture thing going on. Even though, we're speaking different languages, we're eating different foods, we've got some diversity within the culture. There are some pretty standard things in industrialized nations. We've got agriculture, we've got industrialization, and we've got hunter-gatherers. And so, like, most people have, and then there's AI and smartphones. That's the revolution that's happening right now. But, like, even though it seems linear, and you watch, everybody's a hunter-gatherer, and then there's the agricultural revolution, and, like, most people go agriculture. Well, now we've got two cultures. We've got the hunter-gatherer culture, and we've got the agriculture culture. And yes, the hunter-gatherer tribes, they do grow, but when they reach a certain size, they tend to split up. So, like, 150 to 200 is a stable population for a hunter-gatherer tribe. For an agricultural society, you start to build cities and then city-states, which eventually turn into nations. And then, but even though it seems linear, I am proposing that it's not actually linear, and that, well, we that have gone through the agricultural revolution are not somehow more advanced than the hunter-gatherers, but also that they're not more noble than us. It's just different. It's not better, it's not worse. And then, of course, agriculture creates stockpiles for the first time. So when you're hunting and gathering, you go where the food is. If there's famine, if there's drought, you got to move. Um, but if you are agricultural, then you start having storage, and so you get more. Um, you get like there's probably some alcohol in hunter-gatherers, but grain storage almost inevitably leads to the production of alcohol and the discovery of alcohol. So hunter-gatherers, they have different plant medicines. They've got marijuana and psilocybin and coca leaves and all kinds of different things. But alcohol, probably not too much. But then when you have grain storage, it's almost inevitably going to lead to the discovery of alcohol. So that's one difference between cultures, is that alcohol is going to become prevalent in an agricultural society. And then also you've got food storage. So like if your village is farming and storing food, and a village 60, 120 miles away, which is 3 or 4 days, it's far enough that you're not going to run into each other on purpose, but it's not so far that you can't get to them on foot. They're storing food. It's the middle of winter, and you've run out of food. You've always been friendly with this city, but you're starving. Now you've got an incentive to go attack them and steal their food. And so, now theft becomes a concept that, wasn't really a thing before. Because before, we were all just kind of, I want you to have a bow and arrow, and I want to have a bow and arrow, and I want your house to be good, and I want my house to be good, because I'm stronger if you're stronger. So, there are a lot of things that happen when you have agriculture. And then I think you have to have a sort of a massive population to have industrialization. And industrialization changes things again, and a regular agrarian society is going to have some different properties than an industrialized society. And now we're moving on to artificial intelligence and smartphones and the internet, social media. So it's all going to change again, and we don't really know what a smart society is going to look like. Smart technology society is going to be as different, I think, from an industrialized society without smart technology as an industrialized society is from an agrarian society, as an agrarian society is from a hunter-gatherer society. So I don't know why we've gone down this rabbit trail. I'm trying to remember what got me started on all this. But yeah. Anyway, pivot, complete subject change. I go for a walk almost every single day. I think there are 4 unavoidable experiences for an intact human. And that's kind of a working title for this list, the 4 unavoidable experiences. Walking, sitting, lying down, and standing. So, as long as you're an intact human with a full working body, you're going to experience these 4 things: walking, sitting, lying down, and standing. They're also the 4 meditative postures. And so if I win the lottery tomorrow, then my life in 5 years is going to involve walking, standing, sitting, and lying down. And if I get sentenced to prison for life tomorrow, then my experience is going to involve walking, standing, sitting, and lying down. And so I think with that information, it's important, and I've done a whole video on this. I think it's just called something along the lines of walking, sitting, standing, and lying down. But I think it's important to be able to be happy just sitting, just standing, just walking, and just lying down. And if you can, then even if you're walking to the gallows, if you can be in the moment and you know how to be happy just walking, then you can be happy because, yes, in some sense you're walking to the gallows, but as far as your experience is concerned, you're just walking. And so it gives you a real, I don't usually like the word control, but it gives you real control over your own emotional state if you build the skill to be happy in those 4 states. And so that's one of the reasons that I walk. Practice to be happy walking. Another reason that I walk is because it's kind of a stim. It's stimming a little bit. Like it's engaging enough that I can't get completely lost. I have to be paying attention to where I'm walking so I don't trip and fall. There are dogs. There are people out there. I'm leaving my home and I'm walking around. It's safe here, safe enough that I can get lost and I can cause myself to suffer. Out there, I wouldn't call it walking my neighborhood a dangerous activity, but it's more dangerous than sitting in my recliner. There are, like I said, dogs. There are people. There's potential for alligators and snakes, and I've definitely seen deer and armadillo, neither of which are dangerous, but there's potential for bears, there's potential for boars, both of which would be dangerous. A lot of birds. Saw 4 cardinals today. That was nice. So, and there's also stillness in walking, which is interesting. It's like balance, right? Because we have 360 degrees around us, which is 180 axes. Whatever. 1 axis, 2 axis, whatever. So, even though we're moving forward, we're out of balance because movement requires imbalance along 1 axis. So in the back to front axis, we're out of balance. We fall, we catch ourselves. We fall, we catch ourselves. We fall, we catch ourselves. But in the other 179 axes, we are in balance. So there is stillness in walking. So this is one of the reasons why I go for a walk, because it's one of the meditative postures. It's a good time to contemplate. It's a good time to daydream. I also walk because it gets me outside, it gets me fresh air, it gets me sunlight, it gets me movement, all of which are good for the body. I used to walk to plan my day. However, I've given up planning. Now, when I say I've given up planning, I am still going to plan. Planning is necessary for practice, for having a practice. So like, I have a meditation practice. I have to plan for that to some degree. I plan to meditate an hour a day on free days and 20 minutes a day on school days. So that requires planning. Events require planning. If I'm going to host an event, I have to plan so that I can create a structure so that people can come to my event and the structure is there and they can play inside of that structure safely and they don't have to plan because the plan is already there. They don't have to think about it. They can come inside of the container and they can play. And then I can also do that for myself. So it's I can plan a day in order to give myself structure so that I can play within that structure. And then I can set it up so whether it's through notes or my calendar or alarms or whatever, there's something that feels like another that tells me when it's time to do the thing, so that I know that I can rest assured that everything's been thought about and there's safety and there's structure in this. But the future is uncertain, and it just is. And so I spent a long time making peace with death, with the fact that if I have an identity, if I am anything, I am Benjamin, I am the Wolfman, that's going to end. I am going to die. Everything keeps going. So if I'm everything, great. But this incarnation, this version of me, not going to last forever. No matter what cosmology you believe in, I am going to die. There may be reincarnation, there may be heaven, there may be oblivion afterwards, but there's a limited time for me to be this way. This version of me is definitely going to die. I don't see any way that that's not the case. So I've made peace with that. The other thing that seems to be true is that the future is uncertain. And I'm going to tell you this. This has been in my head for the last 5 minutes or so. I want to go check the time on this video, but I have to get out of my chair, and I don't want that in the video. But I'm going to go ahead and do it anyways. So I'm going to go check the camera. And sorry for breaking the fourth wall, but I'm going to check the camera, and then I'm going to come back to the seat. The reason I don't want to do it is because it's easy to trim the front and the end of the video. I'm not a big fan of editing out of the middle, but give me a second. All right, buddy. So 37 minutes. I went for a walk this morning. And I used to walk for planning purposes, and the reason I would plan is because I was trying to actively ignore the fear and anxiety from the fact that the future is uncertain. And so my work now is to make peace with the fact that the future is uncertain, and no amount of planning is going to make the future certain. There is no such thing as safety. You can be safe enough, but you can't be totally safe. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't have an alarm system. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't lock your doors. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't carry a weapon if you're going into an area where that seems prudent. And I'm not saying you shouldn't wear a helmet or a seatbelt or whatever. I am just saying that no amount of preparation is going to make me totally safe. And so I do think it's good to be reasonable and to create safe enough, but I also think it's important to acknowledge and to make peace with the fact that the future is uncertain. There's an infinite amount of information out there, and there is a finite amount of information in here. I don't know what's going to happen. No matter how much predicting I do, no matter how much planning I do, I'm not ever going to know what's going to happen. And as Alan Watts would say, sometimes there's a rat in the box, and sometimes it's a Rolex, and that is what makes the game fun. So not all of the surprises are bad. A lot of the surprises are very, very good. I've gotten a lot of things that I didn't think it was possible for me to get. Wonderful things have come into my life. And I've gone through some horrible things that I didn't expect. And I've survived them. And I won't survive them forever. Eventually I'm going to die, but I'm no longer willing to use planning as a method to pretend that the future is certain so that I don't have to feel the anxiety about it. Anxiety is an emotion. As it says in the Tao Te Ching, I'm paraphrasing here, but basically it says, even a hurricane doesn't last forever. And this is the power of heaven. So you think your panic attack is going to last forever? If heaven can't even create a storm that lasts forever? It's just not the way of things. And so so yes, I have some anxiety about the future because the future is uncertain. And in the past, I have used sort of compulsive planning as a security blanket, and I would go, okay, well, I'm going to go for a walk, and then as soon as I get back home from my walk, I'm going to take a shower, and as soon as I'm done with my shower, I'm going to start my homework. And, as long as I've got those three things, and then also, I know where I'm going with my life, and I know what I'm planning on doing, and I know my end goal, and I know my next step. And as long as I know that, then I can pretend like the future is not uncertain, and I can ignore this anxiety. But it doesn't go away completely. It just gets pushed to the periphery of my consciousness and into my subconscious, unconscious, whatever. So I'm not doing that anymore. It's a transition for me. And one of the main times when I would set up those, plans would be while I was out walking. So one of the things that I asked myself while I'm out walking today is, what do we do? What do we do when we're walking? And I talked about all the benefits of walking, the sunlight and the meditative posture and the stillness. Also, there's a binary thing that happens. We left, right, and then I think it's the lobes of the brain talking to each other, and I think that's good. There's stillness in it. Fresh air, there's sunlight, there's movement, all these things are good for the body. It's consistently pleasant. So these are all benefits of walking. But one of the main things that I used to do while I was out walking is plan. And while I am still planning, I'm planning my practices, I'm planning events that I'm hosting, and I'm planning structured days for myself. I am no longer compulsively planning in order to actively ignore the uncertainty of the future. Instead, I'm making peace with the fact that I don't know what's going to happen. It's uncertain. So what do I do while I'm out walking? Because my habit is to use some of that time for compulsive planning. And I think I didn't do any singing today while I was out. Well, I probably sang a little bit. But one of the things that I can do while I'm out walking is sing. And I think it's interesting that the music department in a college is separate from the art department. I think it says a lot about the way we treat music in this culture. Because most musicians are reproductionists. Someone else wrote the music, and you just play it. Like, this is the way guitar lessons and piano lessons work. You get a piece of sheet music that somebody else wrote a long time ago, and you learn how to play it on the instrument. This is not playing. I mean, we call it playing, but when you are reproducing someone else's creation, that's not play. It's called playing an instrument, but you're in the psychological sense of mammalian play, you're not playing at all. You're doing a very strict thing where you're trying to produce a very specific result. I don't necessarily like jazz, like the way it sounds, but like the philosophy of jazz is where it's at. You understand the rules, you understand the scales, you understand the rhythms and so on and so forth, and then you understand how you can improvise around. Okay, so like music is meant to be played, and when you play with an instrument, instead of just reproducing something that somebody else wrote hundreds of years ago, then you're producing art. So when I talk about singing out on my walks, I'm not talking about singing, Santa Monica by Everclear or whatever I sing at karaoke. I'm not talking about singing songs that have been written before. I'm talking about warming up my vocal cords. Oh, like 3 basic ranges, and then just letting go. I'm walking, look around, I'm receptive. Oh, what's up, sausage? That's sausage, if you can see him. And I make a tone. I try not to be in my linguistic thinking mind too much. I try to just let it go, and I see what comes out. Just play. Warm the voice all the way up, and then just see what comes out. Oh, 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 and I do try to avoid, definitely I try to avoid lyrics of songs that I already know. I try to avoid words at all, at least at the beginning. Once that flow is going, then I can throw some words in, and I can see if maybe some poetry also comes out of me, And I've written some good poems that way. I was about to self-deprecate, I think they're good, but they're just, whatever. I've written some good poems, and so yeah, I'll sing tones. That's one thing I didn't really do that today. I'm sure some music came out of me because I'm a very musical, stimming type of person. Music comes out of me a lot. But that's one thing I can do. And then the other thing is just daydreaming and contemplating. Similar energies behind both things. But daydreaming is more visual. And contemplating is more conceptual. So if I'm daydreaming, it's a story, it's a vision, it's an image. I imagine what if I had a billionaire uncle that I didn't know about, and he died and left me his castle in Bavaria and $1 billion. What would I do? And I play out this scenario, or I think I daydreamed about having a van, a work van today. I'm seeing more and more work vans, and I can have one. I can have a work van, and I think it's going to start a solid color, maybe white, maybe blue, maybe green, but the van's going to be one color, and then I'm going to put the sort of tribal Wolfman logo that I've designed with the wolf and the circle and the 4 runes that go with it. I'm going to put it on the hood. I'm going to put it on the left side, the right side, and the back doors. And then I'm going to put depictions of trickster gods all over it. Kokiopeli, Coyote, Loki. I can't remember. There's an ant. There's an African trickster god who's an ant. His name is Antonisi or something like that. Him, Wolverine from Canada. Not Wolverine, the Marvel Wolverine, but the First Peoples Wolverine. I think that's the trickster as well. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to put trickster gods all over it, and then I'm just going to cover it with psychedelic lines and waves and ripples and bubbles and scales and stuff like that until every inch of it is covered. And it's going to be a work in progress for a long, long time. It's going to be a lot of fun to paint it up. Every time I'm gonna scuff up the surface. I'm gonna paint the thing in a specific area. scuff up the surface, tape off where I don't want any overspray to go, the windows especially, but just the area around where I'm going to paint. Scuff it up, paint it, and then when I get done painting the design, clear coat. And then with the clear coat, then it's sealed, and like I don't have to paint the entire van at once. I can do like a small portion. Spray paint. I'm going to use spray paint, stencils, tape. It's going to be a lot of fun. So this is one of the things that I daydreamed about. Contemplation is more like when I think about a concept, like what is suffering? What is the difference between pain and suffering? And like, as you know, if you watch my videos, I think that pain is like pain. It's just pain. Pain in my hip, whatever. But suffering is when you think the pain is bad and wrong, and it shouldn't be there. And so you like kind of do this squeezing in your psyche. That's what suffering is. So that would be an example of contemplation. So what do I do while I'm out walking? I can contemplate if I feel like contemplating. I can daydream if I feel like daydreaming. I can sing. And I think like every time I come back from a good Paralounge, the music is alive in me again. And so like why am I not singing all of the time? You know, the Sufis have a saying that goes, every step a dance and every word a song. And I've mentioned it before, but actually even spoken language has a musicality to it. Like without the snapping, you may not have realized that I am speaking in a cadence, and there is a rhythm to my speech. But there is, and there always is, for everybody. There's beats to it. And really good actors and really good speakers are the ones where they get it right and they don't miss a beat, and there's just a really good, like that's one of the qualities of a good speaker, is that you could put a track to, you could put a rhythm track to their speech. And so the beat is there all the time, and we don't create the beat. We find it and we accentuate it. Even when you play drums, you're not creating a beat. The beat is there. It exists in physics. You just play your drum on the beat. And so this is one of my favorite things to do in a drum circle that is chaotic and doesn't have it's not cohesive, and it's not accentuating the same beat. Is like I'm listening to it, and then I'll start singing this little song to myself, and the song goes, where is the beat? Can you find the beat? Where is the beat? Can you find the beat? Where is the beat? Can you find the beat? And inevitably, no matter how chaotic or quiet or loud or whatever the drum circle is, just by singing the song, it's kind of like a trickstery, winky kind of thing. Because by asking where the beat is in that way, you automatically have it. Obviously, where is the beat? Can you find the beat? Where is the beat? Can you find the beat? And then with my Ngoma drum, it's even better, because once I have it and my body is moving, where is the beat? Doom, can you find the beat? Doom, doom. Where is the beat? Doom, can you find the beat? Doom, doom. It's great. But I have a coaching session to get to in about 10 minutes. So I'm going to have to wrap this video up. And this is a Rabbit Trails video. I didn't have an intention. I didn't have anything specific that I wanted to talk about, but I did have a lot of stuff to talk about. I hope you found it entertaining. If you've watched this far, there's less than 10 minutes left. I'm going to get off here, and I think I'm going to do my coaching session outside today. It's a beautiful day. The real quickly, let me tell you about following signs. So, I think I can do this. I've got an agreement with the universe. I'm tempted to self-deprecate again. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe this isn't real. Magic is real. Of course, that's my opinion. Everything I say is my opinion. I'm tired of telling you that this is my opinion. If you don't understand that the truth is the truth and everything that I say is my opinion, I don't know what to do for you. Okay? So, from now on, everything I say is my opinion, obviously. If you believe it, you believe it. If you don't, you don't. But I'm telling you my opinion. I'm telling you the truth as I see it. I will give you that. If I say it, it's because I believe it, or because I'm telling a joke. And the context should make that clear. Anyway, I have an agreement with the universe that if I find a penny or a dime, it's a message. Now, this is kind of like I don't know what the binary is to. I don't know what's for, but it's quadrinary or something like that. A penny is a message for me about me, and a dime is a message for me about my partner. Now I'm single at the moment, and so I don't have a romantic partner. But if I was in a committed relationship, then that dime would definitely be about that specific person, and I would have a name for who it's about. But because I'm single at the moment, then if I find a dime, it's just the closest thing I have to a partner, which could be one of my parents, it could be a coworker, it could be a friend, it could be a neighbor. It's really situation dependent. If I find it, then in this situation, in this now moment, who is my partner? Who am I partnering with in this moment? So I'm cleaning up. And then so that's one of the two, the binary, and then the other binary of it is if it's heads up, it's an affirmation that you're on the right track. Keep doing what you're doing. And if it's heads down, it means there's an adjustment that needs to be made. It means I should let my imagination go quiet, silent. I should let my thinking mind go silent. I should let my imagination go dark, because imagination is not my definition of imagination. It's not audio. It is video. So it's not sound. It's light, and so light doesn't go quiet. It goes dark. So let my imagination go dark. Let my thinking mind, which is audio, go silent. Let my mouth go silent, and let my body be still. Again, remembering that there is stillness in walking. So walking is allowed in this instant. But to drop whatever it is I think I'm doing, whatever it is I think I'm thinking, and just take a moment to be still and become receptive and allow the senses, sight, smell, touch, taste, sound, introception, which is the feelings in my body, whether it be a pressure in the gut somewhere, or a stiffness or a looseness in the hips, or whatever. Also, like the feeling of emotion, and the messages from my subconscious mind, from God, from my higher guardian angel Bezel, from my ancestors, from the psychic connection that I have with others. Wherever these messages come from, become receptive. So instead of actively, putting things out and creating thoughts and whatever, for a moment, to stop and let my active imagination go dark. Let my thoughts go silent. Let my mouth be silent. Let my body be still, and become receptive. And then out of the silence and darkness, the dance begins again. And so that's what heads down means. Now, if it's a message for me, that's obvious. I find a heads down penny, I go, okay, stop for a second, drop everything, be silent, be receptive. Sometimes I'll start back up, and I'll do the exact same thing that I was doing before, but my attitude changes slightly, because in that silence, my vibration rises, my mood gets better, my thoughts become more clear, I drop some of the distraction. It's good. So it may not be an actual change in activity, but it's just a change in psychology, a change in attitude, a change in energy, a change in spirit, however you want to phrase it. It's not necessarily that if I find a heads down penny, I'm fucking up with my actions. It just means that it's a time to go silent, and there's some adjustment that may be made, maybe just on a very subtle psychological or energetic level. Or it could be that I'm about to run off a fucking cliff and I do need to actually stop. That's also a possibility. But in any event, the message is just interrupt the pattern, go silent, and look around, really, really receive what is here, and then proceed. However you're going to proceed. That's, if it's for me, that's obvious. If it's a dime, that means that my partner needs help, needs a pattern interrupt, needs my attention in some way. So I'm at Paralounge, I'm breaking camp, I've got everything cleaned out, and I'm about to break down everything cleaned out of my tent. I'm about to break my tent down. I've got 2 minutes. Try to wrap this story up real quick. Trying to break everything down. I find a heads down penny. So at the time, I've made a couple new friends. I've met so many people at Paralounge, but a couple of people that I really put some energy into building a bond with, a relationship with. My camping neighbors turn out to be my neighbors in residence as well. They live just a few minutes from my house, which is really cool. So I've got Rabbit and Amanda. They're my camping neighbors. I've got this beautiful woman named Sophia that I met, and we've been talking. And then I've got my sisters, Jessica and Zyra, who are co-light workers with me in Jacksonville and in North Florida. And so I'm like, these are my partners in this moment. So I go check on all of them, and they're all fine. But as I'm leaving Zyra's tent, I run into this guy named Brian, and he's like, oh, this old lady, she's like, she can walk, but she kind of uses a walker a lot of the time, so she's obviously not doing any heavy lifting. But she's run her RV awning into a tree and tore it half off of her RV, and she needs help removing the awning from the RV so that she can drive it out of there. And so I go over and I figure out how to pull the fuse. It's an electric RV awning, where you just push the button and it comes out. It's not a manual one, and so you need to kill the power to it so that it's safe to work on. And that was my whole job. I just figured out which fuse it was, and I pulled the fuse so that everybody was safe, and then other people. And then I looked at it to see if we could remove it without breaking the seal, which we couldn't, so it had to be cut off. But there were mounting bolts, and there was a whole thing. But like, all I physically did, like, I helped figure out how to take it off, and then I figured out the electricals, and I removed the fuse so that everybody could be safe. The point of that story is, to me, the beautiful thing is that we get signs all the time. Everybody's psychic. Most people just ignore it. But when I get a sign, I know what to do based on that sign. But as soon as I tell myself why I need to do it, I was 100% certain that one of those 3 groups of people that I consider my partners was going to need my help. None of them did. Okay, so if I had been attached to that idea, then I might not have had the conversation with Brian, and I might not have been instrumental in helping with this RV repair for this, lovely lady that had come to the gathering and needed some help. So, and that happened, like, every time I followed the signs. I do the right thing, but whatever narrative I create about why I'm supposed to be doing it is always wrong. So I think my work is just to drop the narrative altogether. I get a sign, the universe says, go do this. I don't know why. I've never known why. Maybe someday I'll know why, but I don't. I don't know why, and I'm going to drop pretending like I know why. I'm going to drop creating a narrative, and I'm just going to follow the signs and see what the fuck happens. And this has been my rabbit trailiest video in a long time, and it feels very good to just ramble. And if you've listened to this point, thank you very much for receiving my share. I love you. Feel free to comment. I would love to get more questions in the comments so that I have some stuff some questions to answer in the videos. It would make it a lot easier for me to create more videos if I had questions to answer instead of just coming up with my own questions. Anyway, this has been great for me. I hope it's been great for you. See you when I see you. I imagine I'm going to be creating a lot more videos soon because I don't have time to get into why, but Uru Kundu, Kono Omne Kono Yoko.